Let's have a look at our child widget material here, which is being applied to the image. I've just got two on top of each other here, but let's look at the kind of single segment material. So my material dynamic circle, because I'm using it in a widget, it is part of the material domain user interface and translucent because we are getting rid of the black in our opacity so that it appears just to be the white circles. So breaking down the material nodes, we've got the top section here that's dealing with drawing the percentage, i.e. the segment size, and then we're multiplying that with a circle where we can change the scale and the density, but we're not actually changing that. We've just set that to a high value. That'll make sense in a minute. And then because we are effectively drawing those on top of each other by multiplying, when we plug in the results of that multiplication into our opacity, it's effectively creating a mask because anything black becomes completely translucent. And our base color is just the white. So let's have a look at the nodes. We've got a texture coordinate going into a subtract, which basically just reduces the constant b down to 0.5. So it means that it's drawing things into the center. Let's have a look at what that means. So if we start a real-time preview, you can see that this is now at the center as opposed to our UV space just being from the top left-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner. By doing that subtract offset, we're now positioning in the center. That goes into our custom rotator. Now, one of the things that, firstly, we just plug in a 0, 0 because we've already set the center. But here we've got control over the start angle. Now, if you recall, in my example, I'm starting from here, hence a 0.25 offset. If I want it to start at 12 o'clock as opposed to 3 o'clock, I can just change that to 0. The reason it's drawing half a circle is because of my dynamic radial. If I just put that to 0.1, it will draw a tenth, so 36 degrees, effectively. So they're the kind of the variables that I am changing dynamically are the dynamic radial and the dynamic scale. I do have these as scalar parameter values, but actually I'm not changing them dynamically. I'll explain why, because we can make this a material function and then have access to all of these variables as well. I'll do that in a separate video. So coming to our dynamic radial, I'll just set it to 0.5 again. What in effect is happening is if we preview here, we have a radial gradient where actually this is 0 to 1 in a clockwise direction. And because we have that alpha going in a radial, which is all procedural, by the way, so it scales up beautifully without any kind of artifacting, we are changing where in that radial scale we want our A to B reference to be aligned. So 0.5, as I mentioned, was halfway. Let's preview this. Halfway down the block. This is before we're masking it with the circle. So this sort of demonstrates that. If I now scale this up at 0.996, it's almost fully formed. So you can see how that's changing. And because of that value, and because it's between 0 to 1, so we're saying if A is greater than B, then make it black, this section. And if A is less than B, then make it white. So, here I'm using black and white. Of course, it can be anything to But because we're making it black, we can then effectively use it as a mask because of the opacity. So that kind of controls our segment size. That goes into a multiplier. And then here we have got a radial gradient exponential. Here, this scalar for density. So if I make that 1, then we have our gradient. Because our density is effectively increasing the contrast, we can get a more solid circle, and then obviously the amount of that affects the kind of softness of that anti-aliasing, but 150 worked for me. So multiplying those two together, we get a segment in a circle. White segment, black circle, black square, but then because we're plugging that into our opacity, it means that the only thing that's rendering is the white segment. If I stop previewing that, then obviously we can have a color segment. So that is our material dynamic pi, and that is being pulled into the widget and then applied to an image. I can then use get material and set scalar parameter values in the widget, and that's what I'm doing to change the segment size, but then also scale the widget when it hits the boundary. So I hope that video is of use. If so, please do like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive any updates. And thank you for your support.